How's it?
How's it?
Today we're going to be learning one of the most important parts of composition in photography. That's called the rule of thirds. And it extends well beyond just photography. We're talking about magazines, website design, even if you decide how you're going to decorate your room, where you put your posters. A lot of the rules that you should follow is rule of thirds. It's the Here's some examples of rule of thirds in photography. This is a picture of my cousin-in-law. We went camping, and this is the night after. And he's looking out into the ocean. And obviously the point of interest is right here at his face, what he's looking at. Now, a good photograph directs the attention of the eye, the viewer's eye. A not so good photograph will basically just let your eye wander around the photograph. A lot of times postcards, you'll see that in postcards. It's just like a wide angle view of a photograph, and your eye just like wanders around the photograph, and it's nice looking, but there's no real direction for it. But in this photo, the rule of third is right here. Now, how do you develop a rule of thirds? Well, a lot of times the cameras, they have a setting on that, and even compact cameras have this as well. But if you go into your settings in the menu, you can find where it says rule of thirds or grid line, and it will give you a grid so that you can better position your photographs when you take them. Okay, so in this case, I made a grid after I took the photo, and I'm making sure it has rule of thirds. Now later in class we're going to be doing something similar, so that's why it's important for you to know how to make your grid. Now in this one, the point of interest, the first thing that your eye sees is probably the eye, right, or the beak. But if we had a photograph of this bird and we put him right at the rule of third, if this is a new photograph, you know, and the rule of third point would maybe be right there. Okay, so notice all the headroom. It's a little bit too much headroom for the bird, and it's a little bit crowded where his feet are. Okay, so that's why we use the vertical rule of thirds. For a vertical rule of thirds, you don't have to have the focal point on one of the crosshairs that it creates, like the image we had above, but it still needs to be a majority of the subject has to be in the vertical rule of thirds in this part, and the bird does that. Okay, here's the example of horizontal rule of thirds. Now there's no grid line because I want you to now start thinking and seeing more and naturally the rule of thirds. But notice if you draw a line about right here and right here, this sky right here fills in about the 1/3 of the photograph, and then the black space is like the 2/3 of the photograph. Now, obviously, there's no focal point or obvious focal point, but naturally, your eye will first go to the maybe this. What it is mud after the rain. So during sunset, so your eye will probably go here, here, and then naturally be led to the top rule of third. But it's always good to have a focal point. This is a photograph. It doesn't follow any rules of third. It's a bad photograph that I took and I cropped out, and your eye basically just wanders around this photograph, like I just said a lot of postcards have. But this was the original photograph. This is a picture of my father. He came to visit me when we had our first child, and so your eye naturally goes to a focal point, which is him, and then it leads out into the ocean to see what he's seen. So you're almost like, hey, this is kind of like his perspective, you know. And I really like my dad. He means a lot to me. When I made my credit card, I made like an Orbitz credit card, and then I used his photograph for my credit card, and so I really like that one. So, but notice still there's no rule of thirds. It probably would have been better to put him more here and develop more rule of thirds. But I hope that you're thinking more along the lines of composition now. Now here's a photograph on Kauai in Hawaii. Now this lighthouse, notice if you draw the lines for the rule of third, it basically intersects right at that door in this area. So this is a proper rule of third photograph, and notice it's more of a square. So it basically doesn't matter if it's long, if it's short, if it's square. you can always use rule of thirds rule for your photography. And it also, notice this is about 1/3 almost. So it's almost like a double, like a horizontal rule of thirds and a focal point rule of thirds. Okay, and so those are the things to look for. What you're going to be doing is you're going to be applying these rules into a little assignment we're going to do today. What you'll do is you'll hit Command N in Photoshop, okay, and we're going to create ours. It's going to be 6" by 6". And we're going to hit OK, RGB White, that's all fine. And we're going to have a square, okay? I'm going to zoom in a little bit more so you can see it. And that's Option and scroll with the mouse. Now, if you hit Command R, okay, you'll see that these rulers pop up, okay? Command R. And what we can do is we can basically make a cheat sheet for us so we can get those rule of thirds. Now, to get them evenly in the rule of thirds, you want to make sure it's like, you know, we just said it was what, 6 by 6? So that means each square is going to be what? What's 6 divided by 3? Okay, so each one's going to be about 2. So what you're going to do is, if you see up in this part corner, we're going to grab this and drag it right to this corner. Okay, so that way it's 0 on both ways. So now it's 0 here, 0 here, and this is -1, and so on. So we're going to drag this up. Right now, it's not in centimeters, it's in inches. Sorry, it's in centimeters, not inches. So we have to convert. Is it about 4? Now, when you change your ruler, if you have it on centimeters and not inches, you need to go to Photoshop and then go to Preferences. And then you can go to the Units and Rulers and then change that to the rulers, not centimeters, but inches if that's what you want. And then you can hit OK, and then you're good. Try to eyeball it. So I'm going to grab 2 on the horizontal side too. There you go. And let's see. Okay. And one way you can tell if you're right or not, you can use the Marquee Tool, draw a square on one of them, hit V for the Move tool, and see if it's correct. And notice I'm a little bit off on this one. Okay, so I'm gonna move this one over and move this one over. Okay, so that's about right. So what you're gonna do now is you're gonna take a couple of photographs. This morning I had Deha take some, I said go shoot some bad photographs. So what he did was he took some bad composition photographs here. So what you're gonna do is choose one of these and apply it for rule of thirds. And I'll give you an example. So first of all, I kind of like this shot that they made, so I'm going to use that. So what you'll do is you'll download the photo. Up here, just click download, and then drag it into Photoshop, and then hit Command A, and then Command C, and then go to your Photoshop file that you made, and hit Command V as in Victor. Then you'll see it's really big, okay? And that's great, because now we can hit Command T, which is transform, hold down the Shift key, because remember, every time we resize photos, hold down the Shift to keep the aspect ratio. And now we can decide how we want to arrange this photograph. Okay. Now, when I first see this photograph, like the point of interest is usually right here, like the Old Spice, like almost on this logo, right? Like that's the main thing you first see. So what I'm going to try to do is position that photograph so it's right on the focal point. And also, if you see that it's blurry, if you hit enter, it'll sharpen the image to what it should be. It was just a preview. And you'll want to zoom in a little bit more so you can work with it a little bit easier. But I'm basically going to try to position that spot on one of these rule of third points. Okay. Now notice that there's this line coming out. I kind of like that line going through. So if I position it here, I'm going to kind of lose that line. Okay, same thing with here. If I position it down here, I can kind of keep that line. See how the photograph, that it looks like it's coming out of the corner into the distance. But notice I have a gap up here. So what are we going to do? We're going to make it bigger. So hold on the Shift key, fill that space. Still, I'm going to move it over, try to focal point on that rule of third. I might need to get extreme on the largeness of it. Okay, and then I'm going to hit enter. Okay, And so now this photograph follows that rule. And what was that rule that we just said? That was focal point rule of thirds. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to, with my text tool, just hit T for text. Use the text tool. I'm going to paste it. There you go, focal point rule of thirds. Hit enter, and then I'm good for that one. Now what you can do is you don't have to make a whole new grid. All I need to do is hide, the text and the image, and I can add another image in there. Because what I can do is I can take a screenshot after I add my signature picture and post it. So after I did a screenshot, then I'll start over. For my next photo, I'm going to choose, let's see, which one do I want? Okay, you'll notice this one I already did it. This one, just a bus stop, but as you can see, there wasn't any rules going on at all, no focal point even. So what I did was I used this bottom part for my rule of 1/3, and notice how this part blends in, and this is 2/3. So that's one way of doing it for that. Okay. I also tried to do it to this basketball. You could, and again, you can just hide it. I can put the basketball player on one side. Notice this is a vertical rule of thirds, and then I can place my text for a vertical rule of thirds. You can also change it up and put it at the point of interest, and it's a whole new photograph. So as you can see, there's a lot of diverse ways you can use the rule of thirds. I'm going to go over some mistakes that I've seen students make on the rule of thirds. First of all, for their, I see this photograph a lot. You should try to avoid a lot of white space between the photograph. For example, if this was the photograph, see how much empty space there is between the Old Spice and the edge. So I would hit Command T, make that bigger if you're trying for the vertical rule of thirds, and try to fill that space all the way in, something more like that. Okay, a couple other mistakes I see people making. First of all is if they're trying for a focal point using rule of thirds, with this image, there's no really case. It's maybe the lotte and the case here. But if I went to my rule of thirds, I pasted that, I mean, it doesn't look the best, Like, see all the headroom, see all, it looks kind of off. I would use this one for a vertical rule of thirds, either something like that. Notice how the logo is right up on the edge, or you can make it smaller and do it something like that. Okay, so that would look a little bit better if used in that photo. I see this photo used a lot. For this photo, again, there's not a big focal point. You could say maybe the yellow on it, but I mean that doesn't look like the best kind of photo. Again, I would use more on the left side, and it doesn't have to be like the whole thing. You could like make it bleed off the page, and have something more like that. So definitely try to be more creative on your photos when you take them. Another one I see a lot is this one. Now this one has a better focal point. So see the Pepsi here? This Pepsi logo is a much more obvious focal point than the cider was. Okay, so you could make it bigger, put that right on the rule of thirds, like right there, and notice it creates a good sense of balance in this photo. I like how it's open.